Brandon Domain, welcome to Sparta.
You've been sitting on that one for quite some time,
all week long, man. All week long.
I do not blame you. And hey, we talk about, a Spartan pit that people are going to get kicked into. We got 5 drivers that are getting ready to get kicked into that pit at the end of today.
It is going to be a really crazy race here tonight because they are so close, especially above the cut line. Those that are below the cut line have some work to do, but it is not insurmountable.
It isn't, and we've seen some guys that are back behind this cut line have those 15, 20-point drops in one of these races, and that tells you one thing. A, they had bad luck in one of those races. The other thing it tells you, though, is that they can make up that same amount of ground. What happened to them can happen to anybody else. Nobody in this playoff field is safe if they're above that cut line. Nobody is out of it if they're below that cut line. Everything up for grabs still.
Can Jordan Sailors do it again? He's had 2 walk-offs already, one to get into the playoffs and one to get into the second round of the playoffs. Can he walk it off again here tonight?
And that's going to be the big question right now. He's going to have, he's tied with Emerson Ardon in terms of how many points they have to make up. 22 points. That's going to take a near perfect night, but we saw him do it at Michigan, like you just said. Jordan Sailors has 4 top 10s this season. 2 of them have come in the playoffs. He's improved his average finish by 6 positions since the playoffs started compared to the regular season. He's one of those guys that steps up. We've seen that here in these first 2 cutoff races. Might see it a third time.
We may see that, but obviously those front runners, Reese Schaefer and Timothy Latham, they have been on fire all season long, and of course, I mean, they deserve to be up there in that top 5, but we will see tonight who the rest of those top 5 will become. But we also have the Tier 2 championship going on. Devin Zimmerman leading the way there.
Yeah, Devin Zimmerman, a bit of a part-time schedule, came back with a vengeance, though, once he's been kind of running full-time once again. He's got that 10-point lead over Brian McAvoy, who I think has been quietly impressive all season long. Scott Kalal rounding out those 3 drivers that are in the money for that Tier 2 championship. And then you have his teammate over at Phoenix Virtual Racing, Matt Greathouse, and then Zach Deuscher for VAR also sitting there rounding out the top 5. That one's still up for grabs. I believe all 15 drivers still mathematically eligible to make that top 3.
Yeah, and if that was not enough, we also have the team championship still up for grabs. We've got a couple of great matchups. Now, these are a little bit, Phoenix Virtual Racing, they have a shot at this if they really, really show out tonight.
They certainly do, and you can see that finish. They've been consistent throughout the pack, throughout their entire team roster for most weeks here, and last week was a good example. They had 3 in the top 16. The problem is you got Timothy Latham out there who's running just in the top 3, it seems, every single week right now. So he's making some big points, and then you pick up a Brian McAvoy or a Michael Politis. Politis still running for the playoffs as well as an individual driver, sitting in 7th entering this race. So a lot of momentum and a lot of motivation for both of them as they're running for Tier 2 and the playoffs. That's a lot of reason for those guys to really hit it big tonight, and that 40-point difference, it can be overcome, but that's going to be a big number with those 3 drivers, Latham, McAvoy, and Politis, really gunning for it.
Yeah, and on the other end of the bracket, you've got Tank Racing and Rat Pack Racing, and Tank Racing has this thing basically wrapped up. It would take a miracle of epic proportions and a disaster of epic proportions from Tank Racing to miss out on getting to the finals.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Tank Racing right there, a 2nd, a 7th, and an 8th, and that's pretty much what they've done all season long, and it's typically been those 3 drivers. I mean, their whole roster, top to bottom, has been absolutely incredible, but you're looking at 3 drivers that are among those playoff drivers, among those championship contenders since the start of the season, in Schaefer, Causey, and Berger. Rat Pack Racing, they've been short a man here every now and then. Believe they'll have enough to field a full team of 3 here tonight, just kind of glancing at it. But you got Blair Holloman, Jordan Sailors there last week, both in the top 20, both decent runs there, especially for Blair Holloman in the top 10, but they're going to need a whole lot, and you said it's going to be a near perfect run if they're going to make up an 87-point gap.
Now, we've got one more contest still going on, and that is the Butt Kicker Hard Charger Award. Butt Kicker is sponsoring this by giving away a Butt Kicker Gamer 2, and here in the Cup Series is really the only close contest that's left. You got a couple teammates there at the top, Bobby Anderson and Zach Deuscher, going head-to-head here. They are so close to each other on this Hard Charger Award. We'll see what happens here tonight.
Yeah, and for all, I would say the top three, they're all still up in the running. I think once you get beyond Blair Holloman, that number is going to be a little bit out of reach to make up if you're a Lane Hostler or a Brad Herman. But for Anderson, Deuscher, and Holloman, still all up for grabs to take home that game or two.
And finally, we do have our race payouts as well. So, of course, we do pay out the top 5 finishers of the race as well as the top 8 finishers of the playoffs. So, basically what happens here is those 5 that don't make it into the next round, they will all come back next week, and the top 3 finishers there will get 6th, 7th, and 8th place money. So, they'll still have something to race for next week, too.
They certainly will. I love that addition. I was one of those guys that would have loved it in Season 1, but it came out last season in Season number 2. Kev's over here for Season 3. And next week, I think we've kind of undersold this. Next week's championship in Homestead, but there's going to be the individual championship, the team championship, Tier 2 championship, and that battle for those other 5 drivers that don't make that championship 5, they'll be going for those 3 cash spots as well.
I mean, how crazy is that we are in the champion? We're there, man. I mean, it is time to get this party started out there, and it just cannot wait to get going here tonight. And let's get out there and find out what is going on out there in Kentucky, in Sparta, Kentucky. And there we are looking right at Reese Schaefer and Timothy Latham, number 1 and number 2 on the charts for the grid up. And so that's kind of how they are in the championship as well. Take a look at that grid.
And it is a lot of heavy hitters right up front. And you point out that it's row 1 is going to be Schaefer and Latham. Over the course of the entire season, they're only 4 points separated from each other if you took out the playoffs. That's how even that these two drivers have been. Latham has the 3 wins. Schaefer still yet to get a win, but he's got 13 straight top 10 finishes, and he's starting up front. Row number 2 will be Emerson Ardon, who has been very hot when he is on, and then very cold when it's been off, but starting P3, that's a great position for him tonight. Jeremy Little is going to be in position number 4. Row 3 will be Matt Greathouse and Seth Berger, who enters this race 3rd in the playoff standings.
Yeah, Ed Shear, they're right on the cut line. He is going to start off in 7th place. Needs a good race here tonight. Devin Zimmerman, our Tier 2 championship leader, is up in 8th and looking to extend that lead a little bit. Joshua Siegfried, also still in that Tier 2 playoffs. He will start in 9th. Brad Herman, below the cut line right now, needs a really good race up there in 10th position. Justin Smith there in the Tier 2 playoffs as well, back there in 11th. And Byron McDonald rounds out your top 12, starting in 12th.
As a heavy hitter field here, as we got 24 drivers on track, which means there's about 27 points that can be picked up, and that means that every single driver in this top 10 remaining here in this second round of the playoffs still eligible to make their way through. It's only 22 points back from Ed Shearer in 5th to Jordan Sailors and Emerson Ardon, tied for 9th entering this race. Ties advance as well, so we could see more than 5 at the end of this night, and that wouldn't surprise me as tight as the season has been.
It would be a really cool thing to see six drivers next week, just to have even more competition out there, because these guys are all such great drivers. It has been a phenomenal season. I cannot wait until season 4, but we got 2 more races to get there, Brandon.
We absolutely do. 1 race until the championship week next week at Homestead, Miami. And, man, I'm telling you, I'm looking through this field. There's so many heavy hitters. But you know what? I normally get asked this first. I'm going to ask you. Who do you have tonight in this race?
Man, I really think that the guy that really gets hot at the best times is Seth Berger. I really think that he is going to have the car here tonight, even though he's starting back there in the 6th position.
Don't blame you for that pick at all. And you know what? I'm going to go, it's a little bit of a cheat. I'm going to go back up to that front row, but I'm looking at old number 5, Timothy Latham. He's got 0x races, no incidents in 7 of the last 10. Average finish this season is 6, 3 wins, including at Nashville on a similar-ish track last week. I can't not look past that 5 car.
Well, here we go with the silverback green flag. Going to be waving out there, and Timothy Latham and Reese Schaefer get this thing going.
It's a big jump there on that outside line, actually, for Timothy Latham, as he's going to carry some momentum here. And this racetrack in Kentucky, it looks pretty cookie cutter, this 1.5-mile D-shaped oval, but each side of the track, it reminds me a lot of Texas. One side completely different than the other. You can go so much faster through 1 and 2. 3 and 4 are going to be a whole lot slower pace, a little bit flatter. It's just going to abuse those tires a little bit more. It's a really interesting driver's racetrack because one side is going to be good, one side is going to be bad for most of the field.
Yeah, it's very rare to have those drivers that have both sides completely and totally figured out for the entire race. And the other thing to make note of here is the fact that you've got Latham pulling out front already, and so these guys behind him have to figure out, do we hold back, do we wait until a little bit later in this run, or do we go after him right now?
And this is a track that's very tough on tires because of the differences there, because of the racing surface, a little bit of an older racing surface when it comes to iRacing as well. So these tires do grate a pretty good bit around this racetrack. You're looking at probably 2 stops in this race. I don't think anybody's really going to gamble on a 3-stopper. So tire conservation is going to go away. And you also have to think there's 24 cars in the field, a little bit smaller of a field. This racetrack starts to spread out with these cars. They stop bunching up so much as we got maybe 3 wide here going for the lead as it's Latham and Schaefer side by side coming out of turn 4. But if this track starts spreading out, we might see some long green flag runs.
Yeah, and that might be why Timothy Latham is kind of holding back a little bit here is, once you get everything spread out a little bit, I think it's time to figure out, okay, what's the tire strategy? And Latham has been really good, especially this season, of holding back those tires a little bit.
He certainly has, and that's one of the things I think it's rung true for him pretty well since I came on board here in Season 1 and just being really familiar with the drivers now. He's always been really good when this race goes to a longer run. It's a little bit surprising, actually, on the flip side, to see Reese Schaefer kind of start pulling away here. Typically, he's kind of in that same mold, doesn't really start abusing those tires quickly and really trying to get out there. But, I mean, he's taken a little bit more of an aggressive style here tonight, and that might be what it takes to pull out in front, maybe get enough of a gap that it kind of becomes a moot point there at the end of the run.
Yeah, race admins, Danny Dow and Jason Tripp are up there in the booth right now, loving what they're seeing out of these drivers as they all have basically got lined up in a straight line around the track. Even though they're all taking different lines around the track, it doesn't look like we got too much side-by-side going on yet.
No, really, the only time I'm starting to see it is around 9th, 10th, and 11th with Justin Smith, Brad Herman, and Byron McDonald doing a little bit of side-by-side racing. But aside from that, you are right. Everybody pretty much single file around this racetrack as Byron McDonald making his way around on the high side in 3 and 4. That's going to be a little aggressive on the tires, but it's something that if you're comfortable, you can make quick work there. So that inside line kind of bogs down, and this racetrack kind of reminds me, this is kind of a weird analogy, but with they always say in baseball, you're going to win a third, you're going to lose a third. It's what you do with that third in the middle that makes a difference on your season. Here at this racetrack, you're going to have a third of the drivers be really good on one half of the track, a third of the drivers be really good on the other half of the track. But what are you going to do if you're one of those middle drivers that you're not quite figuring it out, or maybe you're struggling on both ends, or maybe you're really good at both ends? Like, there's going to be this weird mixture around this racetrack, and some guys will figure out little things around here that others might not figure out because the ends are so different.
You said the lead away from Reese Schaefer, and really we don't see Jeremy Little up towards the front as often as we probably should.
No, and this is one of those things that I think this track kind of works out for him really well. And he wasn't at Nashville last week. I thought that was another one of those tracks that would work out well for him. He's really good when it comes to short track style racing. And this isn't a short track, but the way that it drives really kind of plays to guys that are good on short tracks, especially turns 3 and 4. And he has a really good understanding of the racetrack when it starts breaking down in that way, and how to conserve the tires, how to get the speed off of the turns. So this not really surprising to me to see him be strong. Just really good seeing him up there, out there in the front of this field, leading the way by about a third of a second now.
Yeah, it's good to see different drivers up front, but let's talk a little bit further back here. We got Jordan Sailors, one of our playoff drivers, back here in 15th position, fighting a little bit here with Devin Zimmerman, who is the Tier 2 playoff leader right now. So Zimmerman actually has dropped 6 positions from the start.
He's dropped 6. Sailors is up 5 right now. Excuse me, up 4 right now from the start of the race. So they're going in very different ways right now. And Devin Zimmerman, I think, might be one of the, oh, wow, real tight moment there a second ago, as they got side by side going into 3. But Zimmerman, one of the guys that I think gets a little bit more patient on the tires than a lot of drivers do. So I think he might kind of be playing that strategy out as we're about a quarter of the way till I think we'll start seeing some pit stops here at the end of that cycle should this thing stay green. I think for Jordan Sailors, he knows that he's got to make his way up towards the front. He's got to get as many points possible. He needs to get up there and lead laps in this race if he wants to get that bonus point, which is going to be all important, trying to make up 22 points. Another big mover, though, through the field is Joseph Causey, a couple of spots up ahead in the 13th position. He's up 7 right now, and he's the one that's sitting outside the cut by 13 points, just 1 spot away. And it doesn't sound like a lot, 13 points. It takes some effort, and you don't have to pass anybody else to get, except for that the people above the cut line to make it in. The problem is that top 5 has just been running up front all playoff long.
With Joseph Causey, if you had told me that he would not be inside the cut coming into the last race of this round of the playoffs in both this series and the Xfinity series, I would have called you a liar, because he is just so good on all those. He has just struggled so much this round.
It's crazy in both series. It's almost been like, I don't want to say good luck or it's a combination of good luck, good skill, good talent, all those things. It just seems like it's all gone away. He's still got the speed. It just seems like something comes up every single race now that just knocks him back to the back or gets tangled up in something. And it's just the worst time to have all that happen. It's just kind of what's going on right now. It just everything that can go wrong has gone wrong for him on the Cup side and the Xfinity side.
Jeremy Little must have hit the wall or something, because he has dropped 4 positions like a rock so quickly. Drops away from the lead, and Timothy Latham takes over that lead.
I'm not sure. Looks like a little bit of damage maybe to that right rear. I'm not sure if that was the paint scheme possibly as well, but he might have just had to back out of it pretty heavy and lost a ton of momentum, which could be the other thing there. But Timothy Latham well out in front now as he got by Little and just checked out about 2/3 of a second. Yeah, that 3 wide racing there behind Jeremy Little. Byron McDonald stuck in the middle. That is not where you want to be around this racetrack.
All right, that's Brad Herman on the top side. Byron McDonald there in the middle. Then Matthew Greathouse, I think, is who that was. That might have been, yeah, I believe that was Matthew Greathouse. So 3 wide, they make it work out. But, man, a lot more movement here than we thought would happen this early in the race.
There's a whole lot of desperation points for some of these guys and really having to make their way through the field. Some guys knowing that they can be pretty conservative as well. And then you got some guys that aren't in the playoffs at all. They're just going for it. So a big mixture of drivers out on this racetrack.
Man, they just keep flipping back and forth as they still flirt with 3 wide every single lap. And Byron will finally tuck in behind Brad Herman. Maybe just for a second. That outside line seems to be working pretty early in these runs.
Now, especially off of turn 4, you can build a ton of momentum because of how flat that turn is compared to turn 2. You get a big momentum run on that outside, and I think, especially with the longer front stretch, because it's got that bowed front straightaway, that D-shaped oval, that's going to be where you really make up some ground. So that high line, it's going to abuse the tires a little bit more because you're kind of running out of the groove a little bit. It's going to eat up that tire, but at the same time, you're going to get a lot of momentum and pick up a lot of ground.
Well, let's jump back a little ways. Those top 4 right now are solidly inside the cut. But then you drop back here to 18th position. Lane Hosler, he was 4th place coming in. He was 14 points clear of the cut line coming into this race. And he is sitting in 18th position right now. Needs to get on the move a little bit just to protect himself.
And this is a concerning start here for Lane, and he's been very good on the long run, so I'm not entirely worried at this point. But what does bug me is in the last 10 races, he started inside the top 10. He's had great qualifying pace and then kind of settled into the run. Today, he qualified in the 18th position. So very uncharacteristic qualifying run. And this is a guy that's been in the top 6 in 6 of the last 7 races. So, I mean, he's been moving his way through the field really well and holding good position. But this is a tall task right now because he's sitting You're sitting about 5 seconds back from the lead right now at this early point in the race. That tells me that speed might not be there.
The good news for him is that he's 14 points clear of the cut line. The bad news is that means that Joseph Causey just has to beat him by 14 positions in order to break into that playoff chase. And so Joseph Causey right now 11 positions ahead of him up here in 5th place. So if something happens to Hosler or if Joseph Causey moves up some positions, this could get really dicey.
It certainly can, and you got to think about these D-shaped ovals. We've had 4 of them this season, Las Vegas being one, Iowa being one, though that's also a short track in a way. It's about 7/8 of a mile. Winner at both of those races was Joseph Causey. Knows his way around these racetracks, and he has moved his way up 15 positions since the start of this race in just 20 laps. That 88 is on rails right now.
Yeah, he must have just not had a really good qualifying lap. I mean, starting off in 20th, that is just extremely uncharacteristic for him, but it looks like he has got his groove going on out there here in Kentucky.
And you know what, as somebody in the Xfinity side, I'm actually looking at this thinking if he gets his momentum here today, that's worrisome for everybody in my side of things come Thursday night with them there. If he gets the momentum here, might carry over. We might be seeing a little bit of a resurgence at just the right time. That 88 can make his way back into that top 5 going into Homestead.
Yeah, let's jump back just a little. Actually, let's jump up front really quick. Check on Timothy Latham. He is almost a full second clear of Reese Schaefer. Then everybody else is kind of lined up behind. There's Reese in second. Seth Berger there in third. Ed Shear putting on a little bit of pressure on Seth Berger, his former teammate. They're still friends, but, former teammate there. And then Joseph Causey, another tank racing driver there in 5th, and another tank racing driver there in 6th, Emerson Ardon. So it kind of seems like tank racing sort of has this place figured out.
It seemed like that all season long, actually. No matter where we go, that tank racing and the Cup side has had it figured out around this racetrack. Nice little side-by-side battle here, the 3 and 4 with Ardon and Matthew Greathouse. But Emerson Ardon right now, 22 points behind that cut line, needs everything he can get, and putting together a really strong run there as he pulls away from Greathouse. Just a little bit difficulty there on that exit, and that's going to set him up to be passed by Zimmerman and possibly Brad Herman as well.
Yeah, he kind of got hung out to dry out there a little bit. Kind of got a little bit too close to the wall, had to back out just a hair. But let's back out just a little bit to Joshua Siegfried back here in 13th position. So he started off in the top 10. He's fallen about 4 positions right now, but I just get this gut feeling that he's trying to save tires.
Yeah, and that's kind of been his thing lately. I think in the last few weeks he's gotten really, really strong at the back half of a long run. And a little bit of a blink there. That was actually Lane Hosler there blinking for a moment, but everything looks all right now. But yeah, for Siegfried, he's been really, really good and putting in a lot of time in practices and on his own, just working on those long runs. And I think it's shown. He's really put together a strong season. No, he got eliminated in that first round, and the results haven't quite been there since the playoffs started. But I think he's been one of the more improved drivers in the league this season.
Oh, definitely. Another driver that has done really well this season, Blair Holloman. He is 3rd in the Hard Charger standings right now, and he's looking really good up there in the Tier 2 playoffs as well. I believe he's 3rd in that one, he's 6th in the second tier playoffs right now, but definitely up there in this race. He's in 15th position. He's got some speed when he wants to have that speed, but right now he's just kind of hanging back and letting things play out in front of him.
Yeah, and you know what? This is a good practice in a way also for tomorrow night, where he's leading the Tier 2 standings on the truck side of things. So really a lot of laps being logged around here in Kentucky. And honestly, I think, talk about the differences between the 3 vehicles, Cup, trucks, and Xfinity. I think at this racetrack, there's almost more in common. Of course, there's going to be different gears and everything with the 5-speed here in the Cup cars, but I think there's more in common with the way that they handle between the Cup cars and the trucks than I would say the Xfinity and either of those other 2. It's almost like a completely different animal with Xfinity. So I think if Blair gets a good run here going at the second half of this race, or as the last 100 laps of this race, I should say, I think that's going to bode well for him tomorrow night.
So let's go back even further here. Let's check out the Gravedigger car from Bobby Anderson. He's been running this kind of paint scheme all season long. I know he's got a special paint scheme in the truck series from Shockwave, but this time around he's going to go with Gravedigger here tonight.
Yeah, that car always just looks so good when he runs it here or in the truck, and just really love that paint scheme, and just he's putting it to use here, and I'm keeping my eye out for him tomorrow. He's one of those drivers that's just a handful of points away from the top 5 and advancing to that championship yet again on the truck side of things, and just always seems to be that guy that just finds ways to keep advancing, whether it be by a point or two. He just always knows how to inch ahead and get into that next round. So I'm really looking forward to see what he does tomorrow too.
No, let's move back up front to 3rd position now. Joseph Causey has worked his way up into 3rd, and he is on an absolute tear right now.
Yeah, I mean, 17 positions gained now at this point in the race, and he's really starting to charge down Timothy Latham. He's gotten within about a second and a half, and he's running the fastest laps out there on the racetrack, even after passing 17 cars. Not quite sure how he's pulling that off to be able to go by everybody and still keep as much speed as he has, but unbelievable run for that 88 right now.
Yeah, he has beat Timothy Latham across the line for the past 3 laps, and let's see if he makes it 4. Nope, not that time. Latham got him just by a hair that time, but definitely his times are on par with that leader, and so we will see if anybody can stop these 2 drivers.
They are absolutely flying, and if you're Reese Schaefer, you're sitting there right now in position 2, looking back in that mirror and seeing Causey just get closer and closer and closer, and I mean, that's going to be something that he's got to have a little bit of a debate there, I think. He comes into this race 23 points ahead of the cut line, ahead of Joseph Causey. Maybe just kind of thinking, all right, if he catches me, I might just let him go and then kind of just eat that position loss and not put myself into trouble. But all 3 of these guys just moving around this racetrack so fluidly. Put Ed Shearer in there as well. He's kind of hanging around within that 2-second mark as well. But this is a good night right now for Joseph Causey. He just needs a little bit more help to make his way through, because you look at that top 5, 4 of the top 5 are above that playoff cut line, and Lane Hostler still hanging around that 12th position.
All right, and the pit window is now... Is it open? No, it's not quite open yet. So we got about 10 more laps before that pit window opens if you want a 2-stop race. So they are just kind of just waiting around for those 10 more laps, but Causey is just burning those tires to the ground if he can.
Absolutely. And you know what, talking about the strategy, I think the earliest we might see anybody come in might be around lap 40. You can go about 45 laps pretty comfortably, so you might see a couple of guys try to undercut it and maybe take the pain of a few extra laps on the last couple of runs on those tires and see if they can kind of, maybe if they're in a pack right now or if they're close to somebody right now, just try to get ahead with a little bit faster of a lap time early on. But I think you're going to see probably around lap 45 for most of the field.
You know, I really think that that when we set up the schedule, and we have some racetracks that fuel strategy just wouldn't play in if it goes green the entire time. But this is one of those tracks that I think it works out perfectly to where, oh man, you can have so much fun with this.
You really can. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, and I think no matter what, unless you really completely just blow the strategy and really overthink it or underthink it, you're going to be fine on fuel. It's just going to be how do you want to get around here on the tires, because there is a pretty significant fall off. We're going to look at about a second and a half or so in these Cup cars, which for the Cup cars is really a big amount of fall off on these lap times because they can hold pretty steady with the wider tires and the way that they're designed now. But I think that as this run goes, you're going to start seeing people just start to gamble on, all right, maybe I just come in a little bit early, try to get ahead of some guys, get a little bit of an advantage, and I'll just suffer the last 5 laps of that next run. There might be some guys that try to stretch this out to 50 and try to be faster on those last 2 runs with fewer laps on worn tires. So there's a whole lot of ways you can go about it.
I think that Hosler heard us when we said that he needed to get on the move here. He has gone up about 6 positions since we talked about him last. So he is definitely on the move, but so is Joseph Causey. So a lot of fun there. But Timothy Latham he's got to be careful up here this far up front because they might tear the vinyls off and find something.
Yeah, there might be some fans of a certain team that are probably picking their ears right now when you say that. But yeah, no, Timothy Lake, he has just been cruising out there, and we were talking about how Causey was catching him, and I think that that pace that Causey had to go make his way from 20th up to 3rd might have finally caught, because he's kind of leveled off with Timothy Latham here a little bit. I think they're just going to try to hold on maybe 5 to 8 more laps here, but Latham just holding steady on these lap times. Nobody's really gaining on anybody. Nobody really falling off either. This has just been pretty consistent.
Yeah, you can see Corey Saucier down there, 37 laps down, and this is actually he just got out onto the track. He did not actually start this race with everyone else. He just got out there, so interesting to see him out there this late in the race, but would love seeing him out there regardless.
A little curious there about what might have happened. Maybe a little bit of connection issues or something kind of kept him from the start of that race, but yeah, good to see him out there. And we talk about Jordan Sailors having the walk-off. Corey Saucier, the first one here this season to pull that off, as he did that at Kansas to make his way into the playoff. And since then, not having the luck on his side, as indicated tonight, of course, too. But really solid season here for Corey after, I think last season was a bit of a transition there, going from beyond the trucks, where he was one of just the top 3 drivers all season long. Had a little bit of that transition season last season, and I think we started to see signs of that Corey of old from season 1 again here this year.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's always fun to see him out there because he is so talented. But yeah, tonight is just going to be kind of him running around in circles as these guys. No possible chance. No, it's just not going to happen. But let's move up here to Steve Whitmore up here in 18th position. And so he has actually had a great season this season, just not in the playoffs right now, but that says nothing about his talent overall. He is one of those drivers that he could surprise us from Ohio Sim Racing next season.
Really could, and honestly still well within the running of the top 3 on the Tier 2 side, only 12 points behind Scott Kalal in 3rd. So he's still got plenty to run for here this season as well, and I think he's been kind of trying to take it a little bit conservative around this racetrack. And as these tires really start wearing out, I think there's going to be a pretty decent chance of somebody making a mistake out there, maybe bringing out a caution, maybe kind of stacking the field back up. But yeah, I mean, he's having a really solid season. I think tonight just either being conservative or just trying to figure it out still around this racetrack. It is a very difficult one. So running 18th, kind of just biding his time. But yeah, really strong season there for Steve, and 12 points out from the top 3 in that Tier 2, still plenty to run for.
Yeah, speaking of Scott Kalal, move up just a few positions here, and there he is up in 15th position. Another one of those drivers that really could have been a playoff contender, just didn't have the luck this season that he needed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always surprised when I think about, doesn't have a win in SRN. Feels like he's got a handful of them with how strong he runs typically. And just the way that he drives on the racetrack, just really respectful driver. Always like seeing Scott out there. So we got pit stop starting here. Matthew Greathouse going to be the first one to bite. And new colors there for Matthew Greathouse in that 51. Off Access Designs joining aboard.
Yep, first playoff driver, Jordan Sailors, down into pit road, trying to get those new tires and hopefully move up through the pack a little bit more as he gets 4 freshies on there. But Timothy Latham still dominating this thing, 1.6 seconds out in front.
Yeah, and he's got no reason to really come down pit road right now because he's still pulling away from everybody. And I mean, you're looking at Greathouse came in, I believe he was running in the 5th or 6th position when he made that pit stop. So he's going to gain a little bit of ground, but I don't think it's really going to be enough to put any danger on Timothy Latham by the time that he comes down pit road, which probably will be in the next 3 or 4 laps, I would guess.
Ed Shearer coming in, Byron McDonald coming in, Jeremy Little coming in. Big notice here on Ed Shearer getting down in there into pit road, as he is the one on the cut line. So he dropped in. I believe he was in 4th position when he came into pit.
Yeah, it was running in P4, and for Shearer, it's basically just finish inside the top 10, and you're in a pretty good spot at this rate because you're looking at 3 bonus points for a win, 1 bonus point for leading a lap. It's going to be hard for Joseph Causey at this point to lead the most laps unless he takes the lead here pretty quickly. Ooh, Reese Schaefer, tight moment there as he gets down on the pit road. But so we're going to see position number 2, Reese Schaefer, make his way down. Timothy Latham making his way down pit road as well.
So that gives the lead over to Joseph Causey, who desperately needs that bonus point, and so he will accept that point, and that puts even more pressure on Lane Hosler to keep moving up through the pack. But Joseph Causey now down into pit road. Ooh, a big break there.
And that's going to be the question. Did he get that break done in time? Man, I think he did. I don't think we're going to see a penalty, but that is a dicey
but then he misses
there.
his pit box.
Oh, that is tough right there. Going to add a second or two, and that big difference, that's going to really hurt because he stayed out that 1 extra lap too. So you got to add about a second and a half there as well. He's going to fall back a good 3 or 4 seconds back from Latham from where he was on the racetrack as Lane Hosler stays out. He's trying to pick up that lap lead, but I don't think he's going to be able to pull it off.
No, Seth Berger coming down in from the lead, and so he will come in there. Lane Hosler is going to follow suit, as well as Devin Zimmerman, Michael Politis, Steve Whitmore, and others. But Emerson Ardon staying out, getting that lap lead before he comes down into pit road. So Emerson will be the very last car that is out there, of course, besides Corey Saucier, who won't need to pit for another 30 laps or so. But definitely Emerson Ardon is about to come in, and that will be the end of the first pit cycle.
Yeah, right at lap 48, so about what we were thinking, that 45 to 48, we're going to see the meat of the field make their way down pit road. That is exactly how that played out as Ardon onto pit road. Big time lockup there as well, but think he did get in under that pit speed limit of 55 miles an hour, makes his way down pit road to his stall, and that's going to cycle that lead back out to Timothy Latham, and it's going to be about a 2-second lead over Matthew Greathouse, who with that earlier stop than most of the other leaders is going to pick up a little bit of time. Ed Shearer looks like move into that position number 3 on the racetrack, also about 2.5 seconds back.
Yeah, and that's awesome for Ed Shearer because he gets around his teammate, or his former teammate, Reese Schaefer. Again, still good friends, still affiliates. But so he will take that 3rd position, and he is going to have Matthew Greathouse in his sights as he will have 2 lap fresher tires than Greathouse. So you will see there is the difference. Actually, Bobby Anderson's between them right now. But once Ed Shearer gets to Matthew Greathouse, it's going to be interesting to see how much Greathouse holds him up.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Greathouse only came in 2 laps earlier than Shearer, so I don't think there's going to be a big-time fall-off, maybe about a 10th or 2 here every lap around here for Greathouse. And that's going to be That might be the high end of it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, it's going to be enough, but it might not be that much there, but that actually looked like quite a bit. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those things, too. I think Greathouse might be saving those tires. Shearer trying to pull forward as well, trying to get up there and try to lead a lap since he does see Latham there. This is the highest up in the running order that Shearer's been all night long under green flag conditions away from that pit sequence. So he sees the opportunity trying to run down Latham. And in a way, that if he could catch him, that would also help Joseph Causey a bit if he can get up front. Because right now, if it's about 20 more laps led for Timothy Latham, he'll lock up that bonus point for the most laps led, which takes a point away from Causey.
And I just got a message over our Discord channel from Jordan Sailors, and he is packing it in for the night. And so that will end Jordan Sailors' playoffs here this evening.
I do see now, I was kind of looking for a reason, and then I just saw he did have a connection issue, reconnected, but I think at that point he's 8 laps down now, and just saw there was not much left in terms of hope there in advancing. But heck of a run here in the postseason for Jordan Sailors, and a huge improvement from the regular season to the postseason. He got about 5 positions a race better in the average finish. 2 top 10s in the last 5 races. Good run there for Jordan Sailors.
Well, he will still come back next week, and he will be able to race for those 6th, 7th, and 8th place positions at Homestead. And so when he comes back next week, he'll kind of get a do-over there to hopefully win some of this playoff money.
Oh, for sure. And like I was saying earlier, that's the addition that I think, it just gives you so much more to look forward to, because you can get pretty dejected when you're so close. You're in that round of 10 and you fail to make that championship 5 here in SRN. And that's a position I've been in the truck side, where you come into that final race before the championship and you're in the top 5 and something happens and you wind up out of it. And you're so heartbroken at that point. It's so frustrating to get back out there, and you're trying to find something to run for. But I think that addition just gives you that extra little motivation, get back on the horse and get back out there, and that's going to be the case here for Jordan.
Well, jumping back to Jeremy Little, who led a few laps of this race, he is back there in 11th position now, so he must have caught some damage or something to be this far off the pace after leading some laps.
Yeah, not long after whatever happened there, he fell back to about the 12th or 13th position, so he definitely had something happen, or maybe just used up those tires to the point that they were just completely evaporated out there, which would be a little surprising to me, but that's also a possibility. Getting those big eyes looking at the plate there, seeing yourself up front and really pushing it. But it's a big fall from that lead, but still holding a pretty steady position in the top half of the field as he tries to race here with Lane Hostler for that 11th position.
Well, we're going to jump all the way back to Doc Holliday back here in 21st position. Haven't talked a lot about Doc this season at all, but out there in that TJ's team car and looking good out there. He is a lap down right now, but does not mean that he can't wheel it around. We love having him out there on the track.
Yeah, one of the old school drivers out here in this field, and he's still sitting about 24 points outside the top 3 in that tier 2. Obviously tonight might hurt that cause a little bit as you see Brad Herman and Joshua Siegfried make their way by. Corey Saucier are going to be as well, and just a rough night here for Doc, but a pretty solid season overall.
And then just in front of him, Zach Deutscher. I say just in front of him, about 10 seconds in front of him, Zach Deutscher here in the 20th position. He kind of had some team swapping going on a little bit earlier this season when Phoenix Virtual came into the league, and so he'll try to jump onto a solid team next season for the entire season long and hopefully get some consistency out of it.
Yeah, he's one of those drivers that when he's on, he's really on, but when it's not one of those nights, it just gets rough out there, and I'm one of those drivers myself, so I understand it. But he's had a really solid run in the first 5 races of this Tier 2 championship that he's involved in, sitting in the 5th position, just 6 points behind Scott Kalal, but seems to kind of be hitting a little bit of a skid here as of late. Had that 12th at Nashville, but it's just kind of slowing up just that little bit as this run goes. Tonight running in that 20th position. One of those drivers a lap down, trying to catch Bobby Anderson just in front of him. That'll be for the lucky dog should a caution come out. So tight race here for those two as they try to get to that position.
Well, moving back up front, Joseph Causey has worked his way into the 2nd position now. So he is doing everything he can, and he's doing everything right to try to work his way into the next round of the playoffs. But the guy that he has to catch, or 2 of them, so Ed Shear is sitting in 4th. So that's not going to be enough of a gap there for Joseph Causey. And Lane Hosler is sitting in 9th. So if Joseph can find a way to win this race, lead a bunch of laps, do all those things, and Lane Hosler drops a couple more spots, it might get really interesting there on the cut line.
It definitely could, and remember, it's a point for every position on the racetrack, going from 40 on back, but that win is 3 bonus points, leading a lap is a bonus point, and a clean 0x race is a bonus point as well. That's all still on the table for Joseph Causey. I think leading the most laps, I don't think he's going to make up 2 seconds and get by Timothy Latham in time to steal that one from Latham, who's nearing that point of clinching that bonus point as well. So for Causey, it's going to have to be get out there and win at this point and hope you catch a good break, because you talked about it, 13 points ahead of him is Shearer, and he's only two spots back. That's 2 points. 14 points of him is Hostler. He's only 7 spots back. That's 7 points. Seth Berger, 15 points clear. And that's only 4 positions behind him. So that gap just isn't narrowing up because the top 5 of the point standings all inside the top 9.
Well, if he can find a way to win this race, even if he doesn't get the most laps led, then I believe as long as he has a clean race, he'll get 45 points out of it. And so that means that Lane Hosler would have to get 31 to tie or 32 to beat him. Now 31 points in Speed Racing Network is 10th place. Hosler is in 9th right now.
Yeah, and Hosler, I will say, is one of the faster cars out there right now. He's holding pace with Latham and much of the leaders, and closing in on Devin Zimmerman for the 8th position. So Hosler doing what he needs to do to try to maintain that position, but he's definitely cutting it close right now if he can't get out in front.
Yeah, you can see here that Hosler is actually ahead of Latham as far as speed is concerned. And some of that might be Latham just kind of holding back a little bit because he does have a 2-second gap, so he's got plenty of room to play with. So maybe he's not pushing as hard, but Hosler is catching up 3 or 4 tenths per lap.
He's doing a really good job. He was one of the later cars to come down pit road. He came in with Zimmerman, with Seth Berger on lap number 48. So he was a lap away from being the last one down pit road. And that little bit of advantage still carrying forward here as they're about 18 laps into this run. So there's still a little bit more pace. He's going to have that draft that he can get a pull from as well that Latham doesn't have. But, I mean, he's getting to the point where these positions are going to start getting harder and harder to pick up. He's just got to try to hang on to this position. He's in a spot right now. If he can sit in that 9th spot, he's cutting it close, but he's rather safe if the race ended right now as we get to halfway.
Moving up a couple more positions, Brian McAvoy, who is sitting 2nd place in the 2nd tier playoffs, he is up here in 6th position, a couple spots ahead of Devin Zimmerman, so this might be exactly what he needs to try to get up into that 1st position.
Yeah, 10-point gap is what he has to make up, and he made up 10 points last week with a 4th place finish at Nashville compared to Devin Zimmerman's 14th. And for McAvoy, he's kind of running. Ooh, wow, he got real close to the wall there on the entry of turn 1, but he's kind of running without a safety net because he didn't run at Texas. So the one drop week that you get in this Tier 2 championship over the 7 races, he's already had that 0. So any bad finish is going to apply the rest of the way. But he's been making the most of this run the last 4 weeks and into tonight for the, I guess we could say the 5th week of what he's been running. Sitting there just at 10 points clear. If this race ended right now, Devin Zimmerman just getting around Greathouse, so that will make it a 9-point gap going into Homestead.
Yeah, and that's a very workable gap. I mean, one thing goes wrong and you can make that gap up pretty quickly. As far as the team side of things, I've been kind of tracking the team side a little bit. With Timothy Latham out front, it looks like Gear Up Motorsports is basically going to wrap this thing up against Phoenix Virtual Racing, and they will likely move on to face Tank Racing there in the finals, which, man, what a great finals that's going to be.
Without question, and I think there's a lot of guys that have looked at Tank all season long and thought, man, that's the team to beat. You look at, I mean, it's basically been the all-star team. When you look at our playoff field as well, and how much of an influence they have on the individual side. But Gear Up, I think, has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger as the season has gone on. And you look at this round of the playoffs, if you put them up against each other, they're only 8 points apart to the favor of Tank at 218 to 210. And with Gear Up leading this race right now, I mean, man, they're looking really stout. So I think Homestead could provide a great battle there for that team championship as well.
Yeah, moving back a little bit to Michael Politis, who is still in the playoffs, but he is on the outside looking in right now, and he's back in 17th, in danger of getting lapped here by Timothy Latham here very shortly. So his season is in the balance, and Latham is just bearing down on them right now.
Yeah, that's a tough feeling, and I know at the same time when you're Michael Politis, you're kind of sitting here thinking, all right, this was a bit of a long shot with the size of the field today. He was 16 points behind Ed Shearer. You start looking at where everybody's running, and you don't pack it in by any means when you're still on the racetrack as you're trying to hold off Steve Whitmore for that 17th position. But, I mean, once you get to the point where Latham starts catching him, I don't think he's going to put up too much of a fight there for his teammate to help him try to get out farther away and try to lock up that position and try to keep him out of trouble. So this is a tough position to be in for Michael Politis right now.
Jumping back here, we were talking about Brian McAvoy and Devin Zimmerman in the Tier 2 playoffs. Well, Zimmerman has just passed McAvoy on the track, so he is looking to extend that lead in the 2nd tier playoffs, as he is the first car on the track that is in the 2nd tier playoffs. So not only will he possibly extend points on McAvoy, he will extend points on everyone else if this holds the same.
Yeah, he certainly will. And speaking of passes, I would kind of want to look back one more spot as well behind this race for 6th and 7th, because Lane Hostler made his way around Matthew Greathouse. So Hostler adding an extra point to that cushion that he's got over Joseph Causey for that final position possibly at this point. So right now that bubble driver Lane Hostler sitting in a spot where no matter what, he's looking pretty comfortably, because Timothy Latham has just locked up that bonus point for the most laps led. That takes another point away from Joseph Causey.
Yeah, that cream is starting to rise to the top here, and if Hostler can get 1 or 2 more positions on this thing, then it might shut the door on one of the favorites of Joseph Causey.
And that is absolutely crazy. You think about it, it's almost like a Kevin Harvick kind of moment. If Joseph Causey doesn't make it, going back a couple of years when Harvick won, 9 or 10 races in the season and didn't make the championship race. And Joseph Causey leads all Cup drivers with 4 wins this season. Iowa, Vegas, Auto Club, COTA, doing it at 4 completely different racetracks. But then when it came to this round of the playoffs, just everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for him. And he might be the odd one out of those playoff favorites coming in that I think everybody thought, all right, well, you can just kind of table him in for Homestead. And he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to get there at this point.
You know, you and I, before the broadcast, were talking about the points that were going on, that if we just kept the track of the points the entire season instead of doing this playoff structure that we have. And this could be one of those arguments where, hey, maybe the playoff system is not, is not the be-all and end-all, just having a Joseph Causey not even be in the final race at all. But this is kind of how Speed Racing Network works. You've got the structure, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, and to be completely transparent, I'm one of the people that I'm an old school type of guy when it comes to this stuff. I like, if you're going to do the full season scoring, that's kind of my personal taste on how I like things. And if it ends a couple races early, then it ends a couple races early. That's the best driver all season long. However, on the sports side, you also have the entertainment side of things. And I think that's where the playoff is a big hit. And it does add some pressure there. The Cup side, it would be close this season between the top 4 drivers if we did the full season scoring, but you're not always going to get that. And like I mentioned with Kevin Harvick, I mean, in real life, that playoff does have that factor of there's always going to be that bit of a wild card where somebody that you just assume is going to make it doesn't make it to that final race. At the end of the day, these are all the rules, the rules that we agreed to at the start of the season. So there's no real complaint that anybody can really have because the way it turns out isn't quite the way that you think it is, because you knew it going in what you signed up for. So it's real difficult. I've been bit by the playoff situation myself. I hate to bring that up a second time here in this broadcast, but it's one of those things like, I think I was 4th in points in season 1 in trucks and finished, I think, 8th in the playoff standings because of the way that it worked out. It's just how it goes. And there's always going to be some guys that get the benefit of the playoff and some guys that don't.
You sound bitter about it.
Nah, it was, I would have liked to have that second round money in there, but other than that, no. I mean, it's racing. That's how it goes, and certain things happen, and you just pick up and move on and try to do better. So not necessarily bitter, but I've accepted it at this point, I think might be the way to put it.
Well, let's check in on Burger Nation here. He is sitting 3rd in the standings. Right now, he is 15 points clear of the cut line and sitting here in 5th place. I think he is looking like a champ out here and almost a virtual lock to make it into the next round as long as he keeps that car pointed straight. In fact, he's going to make a move on Ed Shear and possibly take 4th place away from him.
A nice run here between these two as still side by side as they work their way through turns 3 and 4. Really good run here. And you talk about keeping that car straight, keeping that car clean. Seth Berger leading the league in incident points, or in fewest incident points of this since a 15X in Phoenix, which is completely an outlier as these two still go side by side. Very respectful racing down through this turn. He's averaged 2.2 incident points per race the last 14 weeks. That is absolutely unheard of kind of clean list there. I believe it's 7 races out of that 14 of a 0X. I think he's only had 1 with more than 4. Unbelievable run.
For those out there that don't know what that means, so 2.2 incident points is basically one touching of another car every 2 races. And so that is just insanely clean, but that's how he gets to the front. He just gets right up there and he keeps that car completely clean, and that's why it's so fast at the end of the race.
Yeah, and also to throw out there, I believe the highest one, I'd have to double check this, but I believe the highest one that he had, I want to say it was 6, and it was on a road course where you have track limits. And exceeding the track limits is a 1x. So I think you take that out, this is probably down under 2. Unbelievable clean run that Seth Berger's been having all season long.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a wonderful, wonderful drive. In fact, down here on the bottom, you're going to see the clean driving, the clean races here. So Schaefer with 10, Politis with 9, Hosler with 9, Latham with 9, Berger with 8 clean races this season.
And it goes such a long way, and I think what's, I normally call the truck races, and you see a lot more incident points, a lot more contact there because it's a shorter race. You get guys that have to kind of make a move a little bit quicker. These cup races, normally about 30% longer, if not a little bit more than that, than the truck races. It becomes a race about patience, a race about picking your spots, and sometimes being conservative does really well in these races. If you can keep 0 X's for half the season like those guys that you just named are able to do, that's going to put you in a tremendous position. And all those drivers that you named, they're sitting here in the playoffs.
Every single one of them. I mean, they're just insanely fast. These cars are really, really great when you keep them clean. Now, with the damage model that iRacing has, if you mess these cars up at all, you can ask this to Jeremy Little sitting back there in 13th place after he was leading. You mess up the cars even a little bit, and you're messing up big time for the entire race.
Oh, without question. And speaking of the condition of the cars, we're getting pretty close to that pit window once again. We saw about lap 40 is when we had some guys starting to make their pit stops. I believe it was Matt Greathouse was the first one to do so. He's still in that 10th position. But you'll be looking at about lap 85. That window is going to open up. And then you get back to around lap 90. I think that's when we're going to see most of the field start working their way down pit road.
Yeah, 94 would probably be the max. And so Seth Berger and Elaine Hosler both pitted on lap 47. You did have Emerson Ardon pitting on lap 48. So, 94 to 96 is probably your max before you have to go in there. And now it's just a question of who wants to go after it right now and who thinks we might possibly maybe have a green-white checker finish.
Yeah, and that's the other thing you got to think about. We do have the 3 possible overtimes, and if we do see a late caution with as much as on the line here in this race, I would not assume that if we do see an overtime, it's stopping at just 1 overtime with the intensity and everything on the line right now. So that is something that you have to think about, but you also don't want to put so much of a concern on it that you kind of put yourself into a box at this point. I think you kind of look at where Matthew Greathouse is running in the 12th position. He came out of that sequence in 2nd. So that tells you that early stop kind of bit him a little bit out there on these older tires as everybody was putting on those fresh ones. It's Blair Holloman going to be the first one down pit road here in this second sequence of pit stops. But I think if you're getting closer to that lap 100, lap 96, 100, I think you're almost cutting yourself short a little bit where you're going to lose a little bit too much ground and maybe not have enough time to make it all back.
Some of the lap cars coming in. Doc Holliday coming in for his possibly final pit stop of the evening. Just trying to, there you go, first playoff driver to go in there. Lane Hosler coming in 8th position. And he is going to come in and get some fresh tires and some fuel and get right back out there. But he is the first playoff driver to drop in.
And that is a difficult predicament to be in if you're Lane Hosler in the position that he was in, knowing that he's holding that bubble position with the way that this race is played out, and he doesn't have a whole lot of wiggle room with Joseph Causey running 2nd right now. One mistake from Timothy Latham, and all of a sudden Causey's in a really good position to catch Hosler. So to be the first playoff driver down onto pit road to get those tires and having to stretch this thing about 42 laps, that's going to be a difficult position to try to hang on to every spot that he can. Now, the benefit of that and what he might be looking at is at the time that he pitted, he had 3 cars within a second in front of him. And so he's going to be going right by those guys and getting the track position out there. So he's going to be looking at the short term here and seeing how that plays out. There's Blair Holloman on pit road a second time. Wonder if he got a penalty there.
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me, that he got a nice little drive-through penalty for possibly going too fast on the exit, or unsafe pit exit, whatever it is. But right now, the other playoff drivers seem kind of content to stay out there for a little while longer. Joshua Siegfried is going to jump in from the 12th position and get some new tires and some fuel. But we are just kind of waiting to see which of these top 4 is the first to take the bait. And it will be Joseph Causey. Oh, and he burns it. Oh, he's likely gonna get a penalty for that.
Oh no! And you know what? This takes me back to last season, the race before the championship. We saw pit road error after pit road error knock out people all night long in that race, and here we go once again. Pressure on, and a pit road mistake might be coming up here on that 88.
I'm going to keep an eye on him and see if he gets back out there on the track, but nope, he is being held in there right now. He got a speeding penalty or an unsafe pit entry penalty, and so that will almost end his playoff hopes.
And for those that don't know, in iRacing, that's generally a 25, 26 second hold. It does kind of escalate at times, depending, but normally you're looking at about that. So he's going to be falling a lap down just about by the time that he comes all the way back around.
And we got the leaders, Timothy Latham and Reese Schaefer, getting into the pits, and that will cycle the lead over to Seth Berger for just a lap. Seth Berger will come in and get his pit stops as well. And he learns from Causey's mistake and gets it slowed down really well, and he'll be able to get down there and get some new tires. But Devin Zimmerman will now take the lead.
Zimmerman going to take that lead, and he's going to add that extra bonus point to that Tier 2 side. And, you know what, I mean, going back to the pit road penalty there for Causey, I understand it. I mean, you got to go for it. You got to make up as much time. This is the final pit stop in this cutoff race before we get to the championship race, most likely. He had to get everything he could out of it and just gave it a little bit too much. Just got a little too aggressive. Completely understand how that happens out there. Just a tough break for the 88.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you got to give everything you possibly have, especially when you're on the outside looking in. But because of that mistake, he will be scored a lap and a half down from our leaders.
Yeah, now, once this cycles through, very well might be the lucky dog should we see a caution come out. So not out of it entirely yet, but he does have quite the mountain to make his way back up as Emerson Ardon, another driver. I mean, he's been quiet tonight, but just kind of hanging around the top 10 all night long, picking up a bonus point here, leading a lap yet again, and just doing his thing, just trying to make this work and playing the strategy game. He'll have the freshest tires out there, but the problem is now he's going to be losing a lot of ground staying out here this long.
You know, really, it was interesting looking at the number of laps led for each driver, because Emerson Ardon he's had 106 laps led this entire season, which is 86 ahead of Hosler, which is 91 ahead of Brad Herman, which is 91 ahead of Michael Politis, which he's ahead of Jordan Sailors, who's only led 10. I mean, so you would think that he would have a much better season with all those laps led. He's just one of those drivers that, man, he gets up there up front and it just doesn't work out for him for whatever reason.
Yeah, and you know what? He is one of those consistent drivers that I think it sounds weird. The full season format almost plays better to him than a playoff format does. I think most races you'll see Emerson sitting there around that 10th to 15th kind of finishing position, which is where you want to be most weeks. That's really not giving you any bad runs, but in the playoff format, that kind of punishes you a little bit because you just don't have as much time to make up if you don't get a top 5 or anything like that. So he's a very consistent driver, very much one of those guys that you'll see up front, but it just at the end of the day, he's kind of like contending for the top 10s, which is a fantastic day. It's just one of those things in the playoffs, you kind of get punished for that.
Well, look over there on the scoreboard. Those top 5 numbers are all yellow. Those are the 5 drivers that are inside the cut coming into this race. And if they stay up there in the top 5, nobody's going to be in front of them at all going into those playoffs. So that could very well be your playoff field going into the championship race next week at Homestead.
Yeah, that first orange number, the first one that's below that cut line, is Brad Herman, a name we haven't really mentioned all night. Entered this race 16 points back. So, I mean, that number going to be even heavier. He's going to have to hope that a couple of drivers up there in that top 5 right now have some significant issues here in the final 30 laps just to make his way back up there. But, I mean, like you said, you can't pass somebody that's in the top 5 because they're all playoff drivers, all above that cut line inside that top 5. So they're doing exactly what they need to be doing, and they've opened up a pretty good gap over the rest of the field.
Yeah, I mean, and what more can you say about these top 5 drivers that they are still up here in the top 5, and they are going to probably move on to the playoffs to the championship race next week? I mean, what more can you say that the top 5 are in the top 5?
No, without question. I mean, I think that, and you can make the argument, of course, that Joseph Causey gets included in this group as well, but I think you're looking at 5 of the 6 best drivers this season all up there right now. I think that this kind of played out exactly how the system should play out in a way for a large part. I mean, you're looking at, just to kind of run through some of these things, 13 straight top 10s for Reese Schaefer, who's sitting there running in the 3rd position, leading the points on this way in. Timothy Latham, our race leader, 11 straight top 10s, 0x results in 7 of the last 10 races. Unbelievable there. Seth Berger, I mean, we talked about his numbers and how clean of a driver he is, averaging a finish of 7th. Lane Hostler, 6 top 6s in the last 7 races. Unbelievable there. 9 0x races. Ed Shearer, 3 wins, and it's been a bit of a struggle in this playoff run for him. He's been 4 positions worse on his average finish than he was in the regular season, but he's still up there running up front, still won at Chicago, just kind of got snake bit in a couple of these playoff races, but he's continuously up front. I mean, you can't find a fault in any of these 5 drivers that are advancing.
You know, and this is the time where, especially in a playoff like we have right now, that I would be looking, if I'm Ed Shearer, and trying to stay as far away from Reese Schaefer as physically possible. You have all these drivers that are, seconds away from each other, and just stay away from each other right now. That's really what it comes down to, is just get away. Like, don't.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, that's Joseph Causey in front of him. I apologize.
Yeah.
That's Joseph Causey.
But, I mean, in general, I think that's the thing right now, is you're looking at the position that you're in, and I think this is something that a lot of drivers think about all season long. Do I want to make enemies out of somebody? Do I want to, we talked about this before the broadcast started, that there are some drivers that aggressiveness levels kind of comes back to bite them right now in the playoffs, because some guys don't want to put up with that anymore. There's some guys that just happens whether they're in the playoffs or not in the playoffs. You got to pick your spots at times, and I think that the way that you race people comes back against you in some way or fashion. Not necessarily if you're aggressive, could also be if you're one of the more lackadaisical guys out there, if you're kind of more chill on the racetrack, respectful on the racetrack, give up that space. It kind of sets you up in a certain position as well. So I think at this point in the season, certain characteristics are known from drivers, and you kind of get into this position of, all right, do I have these enemies? Do I want to have this person as my enemy when they've got something to race for next week in this championship? I mean, we see it play out in real life as well, looking at Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain and guys like that. It all carries over to this. This is a sim, but the emotions are still real.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody wants to win, and there can only be one winner. And so you have to kind of look at this as a full season deal, and that's kind of what we wanted to set up with Speed Racing Network, was not the one-shot deal where, you go out there, you wreck somebody, there's no real recourse, that sort of thing. But for the entire length of the season, where these guys learn how to drive with each other and against each other, where, they do form bonds, Tank Racing and some of these other teams as well, they are like family. I mean, you step in on one of them, and the rest of them are going to go after you. And so, and likewise, if you're friends with them, then they will also step in and help you. So it's one of those things where it's give and take all season long, and there are definitely rivalries out there on the track.
Oh, without question. And I think that this postseason, and I don't want to glorify it or put a positive light on it, I don't mean it in this way, but I think in this postseason we've seen it more than a few times that the emotions kind of have carried over, and some of those relationships have carried over into the playoffs, where there's been some incidents on the racetrack that have kind of popped up there. And it's just that's part of racing these days. That's the aggressiveness side. That's the emotional side of it. So I think that's something that we are seeing in all levels of it, real life or on the sim. And it's something that you definitely got to take into account.
Absolutely. And so Seth Berger, we're watching him go to the outside and get the spot away from Ed Shear. And like we were just saying, I think Ed Shear is just going to back off and let that happen. I mean, there's no reason to risk what you've already got in the bag right now. So just let that go. But up front, Timothy Latham has just extended and extended and extended. He is almost up to a 5-second lead on Lane Hosler. He has just been on rails all night.
And meanwhile, Lane Hosler kind of sitting there in that second position thinking, man, I took that gamble on the pit strategy and didn't really need to do that in the end with how this has kind of played out since then. But he's still sitting there about 5 seconds back now with Timothy Latham. And I mean, Hosler has kind of worked his way through the field up from 18th place, done a really good job working his way through. For Timothy Latham, it's been from the front row and just running up front all day. So two very different ways to get to where they're running right now. And then, oh, by the way, the pole sitter, Reese Schaefer, sitting there right behind Lane Hosler, trying to figure out his way around. And I think Reese is probably tired of the second place finishes, but that's what he's eyeing right now again.
Now, a little interesting going on. Ed Shear got into some traffic, and now he has lost a couple of spots here. So not really in too much danger here, but it's just kind of interesting to see him fall outside the top 5, if only briefly. But again, maybe he's just seeing the scoreboard and just knowing, hey, I've got some room to play with here. Let's just kind of ease it around the track, get to the finish line. You know, no problems whatsoever. But really great race so far here tonight.
Yeah, and if you're Shearer, I mean, you've got all the information available, whether you use the black box that iRacing provides, whether you use an additional thing from one of the other companies that does an overlay. And I know Shearer is one of the drivers that does have somebody in his ear most races, if not all races. So I'm sure he knows that he's got an 8-second gap back to the next position. He can give up these couple of spots if something feels a little hairy right there in that pack and just fall back that little bit, know he's still safe. Everything's going to get reset to level playing ground next week. It's not going to be any disadvantage. Just got to get in there. So I think he's in that position of I'm not going to waste this car. I'm not going to get into trouble. I'm just going to fall back that little bit, take the hit for a couple spots, and make my way to Homestead and have a good day.
All right, so if you're going into next week, have you already started practicing Homestead before you came into this week? Or do you wait until, next week to start?
I think that depends on the driver. If it's me, I want to focus on what's right in front of me. Because then if I start thinking about other things, that kind of gets me all out of shape, and I just don't like that. There's going to be some guys that, they feel comfortable enough at this racetrack or the position that they're in. As Devin Zimmerman makes his way up to the 4th position, so another really strong run here for Devin. But I think there's going to be some drivers that do look at it and just say, you know what, I'm in a comfortable position. I want to start getting a little bit familiar, not go into full dive practice, but get some familiarity with it, especially with these next-gen cars. It's not as commonly familiar as they might have been in the past. But I'm one of those guys, I believe in the trap week. You hear that all the time in football. You start looking past what's in front of you, and then you start making the mistakes. I would want to avoid that as much as possible. But I think it's going to be kind of a mixed bag. There might be some guys that have dabbled in it, but I think for the most part, I think most people are kind of waiting on that.
Taking a look out there on the track, and right now the hard charger on the track is Lane Hosler up there in 3rd position. Started off in 18th. So started off way in the back, and now he is up in 3rd. And this race has gone green the entire time, knock on wood. So he has actually earned every single one of those spots. So great driving out there for Lane Hosler.
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job. He does have the oldest tires out on the racetrack, about 4 laps older, if not a little bit more than everybody he's running around. So going to be interesting to see if he can hang on to that 3rd position. There's a chance he might fall back a couple spots, but at the end of the day, still going to be enough to get to Homestead as he came in that early pit stop, and I think that's going to maybe affect the back end of this run a little bit, but he's one of the better long-run drivers out there, so he definitely has a knack for this, and that's been very apparent tonight.
Looking at the bottom of your screen there, you can see the hard charger for the entire season. And you can see that Bobby Anderson is out front right now. He has gained an average of 6.95 positions per race. He's up 4 in this race. Zach Deuscher, he's gained an average of 6.5 each race. He has gained 6 this race. So Deuscher might gain a little bit of ground here. Blair Holloman, unfortunately, has dropped out of the race, and so he will end up being down 8 positions in this race. So that will hit him pretty hard on that hard charger. So he might drop pretty much out of the standings there. But Zach Deuscher and Bobby Anderson are going to take this thing into the finals.
So sounds like what you're saying is expect very poor qualifying efforts from Bobby Anderson and Zach Deuscher next week in Homestead, because they're going to need to make up every position that they can to try to edge out each other on that one.
To be fair, I don't think either of them qualified here tonight, and so I think they're both trying to lock that thing in, but man, it is going to be a tight contest next week.
And that'll be another thing, and you know what? That's one of those ones that we really can't figure out those numbers until the end of the race. So we can speculate on it that whole time, and it's going to be fun to watch, but that's going to be very hard for us to call until that thing's over. But just another interesting thing out there on this racetrack next week where, I mean, we're going to have about 5 or 6 different races. And, oh, by the way, we're going to have a race as well. So somebody's going to win that race too. So a whole lot going on next week, and always makes our head hurt up in the booth, but can't wait for Homestead next week.
Lots of money changing hands next week. $500 for first place, obviously, and then we've got the Tier 2 playoffs. We've got positions 6 through 8 in the playoffs. We got positions 1 through 5 getting paid out. We got the team championship. We have the Tier 2 playoffs. We have that hard charger, the butt kicker being given out. I mean, we have everything going on next week. I really, really hope that Jason Tripp, the league owner, has his bank account straight, because it is about to be empty, my friend.
I think he knows somebody that might be pretty good with money, though.
He's got a great accountant, I will tell you that. He has got a great CPA, I mean, a great accountant out there. Definitely Silverback Tax Solutions has helped him.
And we'll drop that name a couple more times, since there's only been one green flag tonight.
For those that don't know, I'm the owner of Silverback Tax Solutions, so it's just a shameless plug, and that's okay. I give very, very few of those all season long.
Well, especially on a race this clean, as we're coming to 10 laps to go. This thing going by in a hurry. We're just at an hour into this race and almost through 130 laps. And good racing here from second on back, as you got 5 cars all within about a second and a half of each other, all racing for this, from Schaefer, Zimmerman, Hostler, Berger, and McAvoy, all in the running for this P2 position.
Yeah, but out front, Timothy Latham, 3.75 seconds, so he's actually backed off some. And Schaefer has started to catch him. I don't think he's in any danger at all. He's got it well under control. But Devin Zimmerman has jumped up into that 3rd spot, so a huge race for Devin Zimmerman here tonight.
And for Devin, he's one of those guys that he's always got the speed. It's just, we talked about it earlier, kind of going with a little bit of a part-time status for much of this season, really kind of limiting him. But when he's out there, always a threat to put together a really strong run, and we're seeing that here once again. And as we watch this close race, another one that I'm seeing, and not necessarily saying you have to cut to it or anything, but another one back around Brad Herman, sitting there in the 8th position. He's got Shearer near him. He's got Justin Smith, who's a lap down right now, near him. So a lot of close racing there as well. So getting pretty late in this race. If anybody was hoping to see this thing kind of re-rack and maybe get a little bit of a caution, we're seeing some tight racing once again. That opportunity's opening back up.
Yeah, I'm hoping that nobody really gets antsy out there, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast that, people get a little bit antsy as we get to 8 to go, and here we go.
Yeah, just that human nature, as I just caught Emerson Ardon kind of scraping the wall just a little bit coming off turn 4 right about the time that we cut away there. But he seems to be keeping it straight and still going. But side-by-side racing for 4th and 5th, Berger and Hostler, with Brian McAvoy right there kind of stalking them as well. So still really close racing around this top 5.
They're not holding back at all, and maybe they aren't listening to the broadcast and they don't realize that they really don't have to hold back, or they really don't have to push too hard, because they're basically in as long as nobody from Brad Herman and Emerson Ardon passes, which they are. I mean, they're 7 seconds behind Seth Berger here, so there's a long way there. So they really don't have to fight like this.
No, not at all. But I think, we talked about the emotions of race car drivers earlier and how it translates to this. You see a position, you're going to want that position at the end of the day. So there is still that, but hopefully they got somebody in their ear saying, hey, you're safe right now. Don't push it.
Yeah, I believe it's David Goggins, a really great book called Can't Hurt Me. And in that, he calls it taking someone's soul. So when he's running in a race and he is side by side with them, he will be sure that he runs one step faster than that person just to take their soul away from them. And that's kind of what's going on out here right now. Is these guys are getting side by side, and they just want to get that one more position just so they can say, "I got you."
Well, being familiar with David Goggins, I'm thinking there was probably a couple extra words in there that we can't say on this podcast.
I can't say half of them, but fantastic book. So if you guys are big readers, go out there and definitely check that one out. It's a really good read.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about the emotion a lot tonight, but at the end of the day, the other part too, if you get by somebody on the last lap this week, that just puts a little bit of something in somebody's head sometimes of like, man, they're really good at the end of this race here. So who knows what they can do next week. So there's always that, but you got to get there first. So that might be one of those things of maybe you just kind of want to sit there and say, all right, good enough today. We'll see you in Homestead.
Just checking in on YouTube really quick. Rob Yo's saying, hey, is this throwback week? We got Sean and Brandon up in the booth. Well, so technically we are the third string this week. So usually Greg Olenek is the man of the hour when it comes to this stuff, and he had to work here tonight, and then he had a backup plan with Pete taking over the broadcast, but Pete unfortunately had a death in the family, so we hope we wished him all the best and his family as well. So he had to bow out of that. So we are the third string, but Brandon, it is always good to be here with you.
Absolutely good to be here with you as well, and definitely takes me back to season 1 and times last year as well, and getting to see a really clean race as Timothy Latham still just very comfortable out in front.
Yeah, it's almost like he's dragging that brake a little bit just to let Schaefer get just close enough to see him cross the finish line first. So 2 laps to go here tonight, and Latham has led basically every single one of them with the exception of the pit stops.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say he took the lead on lap 4 or 5, and ever since then, it has just been utter domination for that 5 car. And man, Timothy just going to sit there, tie for the season lead and wins at 4 here in the Cup Series, 1 at Nashville, Dover, Talladega, and then you're going to chalk up Kentucky as well in about 2.5 miles, 2 miles. That's 4 very different racetracks that he's won on. We go to a very different one than we've seen from any other track this season at Homestead. Wide open, traditional oval, 1.5 mile progressive banking, all that stuff. That is a wide open racetrack. Going to be interesting when we get there. A white flag here for Timothy Latham.
Oh, yeah, it's one of the favorites for that championship race, and that is a championship race that will have Timothy Latham, Reese Schaefer, Seth Berger, Lane Hosler, and Ed Shearer all going for the Speed Racing Network Cup Series Championship. But for tonight, Timothy Latham is your winner as he wiggles it home, crossing the finish line.
With a little flair, knowing he is very comfortable with that size of a lead and that big of a gap back through the playoffs, and utter dominance here tonight from Timothy Latham. Reese Schaefer cannot get away from the P2 finishing position. That is now 5 of the last 6 races finishing in the second position for Reese Schaefer. Devin Zimmerman opening up that Tier 2 lead by 3 points farther. Actually 4 points because he did lead a lap, so make it a 14-point gap between him and Brian McAvoy, as Zimmerman rounding out our podium.
I mean, just absolutely crazy to think that Reese Schaefer has had 4 races in a row in the second position and doesn't have a win on the season. And so that is just how consistent he's been up there in that second position. That could serve him well next week. And so we'll just have to see how the playoffs shake out. And maybe he's just saving that win for the right time.
Hey, you know what? That turned out perfect for Daniel Hemrick last year in the Xfinity Series in real life. But it's going to be all right. Are you going to be Daniel Hemrick and take this thing with the win next week? Or is it going to kind of feel like Mark Martin and just kind of just sitting there that one spot away? That's going to be a tough battle there. But I think we got 5 top-notch drivers out there. 3 of them have wins this season. Schaefer and Hosler looking for the first. 3 wins for Berger, 3 wins for Shearer, 4 wins for Latham. And this is going to be some fireworks when we get to Miami.
And definitely that Raise Energy car bringing it home, and you can use that code TEMPTATION for 15% off your next order. You can see that on the back of his car. Always kind of fun to see that.
Man, these energy drink wars that we got going on in SRN right now. A lot of energy drink sponsors out there, but it's Raise that wins it here tonight when it comes to these guys, and Timothy Latham as well, picking up that 4th win.
Oh, he will take that win, definitely. But let's go to the results here tonight and find out what the overall results look like. And Timothy Latham, of course, brings it home. Reese Schaefer will make it into the next round of the playoffs with his 4th second-place finish in a row. And then Devin Zimmerman in 3rd place will extend that lead of the Tier 2 playoffs. So he is loving that. Seth Berger also making it into the championship next week. Lane Hosler making it into the championship. They're sitting in the 5th position.
In 6th position will be Brian McAvoy, who will hold on to position number 2 in the Tier 2 standings. Ed Shearer advancing to the Championship 5 as well, finishing 7th tonight. Emerson Ardon will fall just short of advancing, but a solid run in 8th. Brad Herman as well will be one of the drivers eliminated after finishing in 9th. Byron McDonald, yet another top 10. That's his 2nd straight here, as he'll round out the top 10.
Jeremy Little there in 11th place. He led a few laps during this race, so just kind of got into that wall a little bit, I believe, and just kind of killed his momentum. But Matthew Greathouse there in 12th in the Tier 2 playoffs still as well. Scott Kalal with a 13th place finish. Joshua Siegfried in 14th, and Joseph Causey unfortunately has his playoffs hopes dashed by a pit road penalty here tonight in 15th.
In 16th place will be Michael Politis, another one of the drivers whose season, for the championship at least, will come to an end. Steve Whitmore will be in 17th. 18th place will be Zach Deuscher. 19th, first one 2 laps down, Bobby Anderson. Justin Smith also 2 laps down, rounding out position number 20. And then out of the race at the end, since there's only a couple left, Doc Holliday in 21st, Blair Holloman 22nd, Corey Saucier in 23rd, and Jordan Sailors in 24th.
Well, man, what a great race here in Kentucky. And it wasn't really Sparta like we know Sparta, but definitely a fun race here tonight, and sets that playoff field up for the championship next week. Let's see if we can't get a couple of the guys up here and talk to them about their race. Let's get Devin Zimmerman up here into the booth. Devin Zimmerman, Sean, and Brandon up in the booth. My friend, how's it going?
How's it going, fellas?
Man, love seeing that car up there in 3rd position. Great run for you here tonight. Tell us about it.
Yeah, appreciate it. That's what happens when we go green. I'm not the best on short runs, but long runs, I'm pretty good. So, if every race ran like this, then I think I'd be a lot better, and possibly, I had to show up, but had some issues in the middle of the season. But, man, it just shows what I could have did if I didn't have those issues come up.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about during the race when we were kind of highlighting you there for a little bit, that you kind of had that little bit of a part-time regular season, but we're seeing what you can do in this Tier 2 playoff once the season really picked up these last 6 weeks, and you're going to hold what looks like a 14-point lead in that side of things going into Homestead, so a pretty comfortable position there. Now that you're back to this kind of full-time run here once this postseason started, how's it felt to really get back into the groove of things?
It felt good. Of course, I got great teammates that can help out, and they helped me back in the fold and got me back into it and settled in. So, I can only thank them, for everything to get me back to full form when I came back. So, big shout out to all the tank racing. That's just not the Cup team. That's all 3 teams, actually all 4 teams, the Cup, Xfinity, and then both trucks.
We don't like to talk about too many series outside of Speed Racing Network while we're here on the air, but we've been watching you the past couple of weeks, and you have been absolutely dominating outside of Speed Racing Network, and now a 3rd place finish here tonight. Are you just on a massive hot streak?
I guess you could call it that. I wouldn't call it that. It's just being, concentrating in the race, making sure I hit marks and not getting frustrated. I got frustrated last week, and we saw what happened. We ended up getting put through the grass, and I don't even remember where we finished, like 14th or something. So when I get frustrated, it goes out the window and things go bad to worse. So just concentrating, hitting marks, not worrying about what others what others are doing. Just worry about what I'm doing and take it lap by lap, hit the marks, run the lane, and I know that I'm good on tire save. So yeah, we'll just do our race.
Well, who do you have to thank here tonight before we let you get back to celebrating?
Yes, sir. I mean, there's a long list. I'm pretty sure Reese has already touched on it. If he hasn't, he will. But Bergeson Farms, Boss Security, Automation, Burgarts, Kieran Dental Lab, Hunterdon Anesthesia Associates, Park Brothers Racing, Parkway Lanes, Teespring Healthcare Billing Incorporated, EWRL, and of course, all of my teammates. You guys up in the broadcast put on a great broadcast, and we are pulling in a new sponsor. I want to go ahead and give them a shout out, 213 Simware. They're going to come on board. And then, of course, next season, go ahead and give shout outs to Honey Press and McConey Setup Shop. Both of them are coming on board my car for next season. So, glad to welcome new sponsors to the fold and ready to end this one off in strong form and come back and be ready to go for next season.
I mean, you have to leave at least a little bit of room for the number on your car. You realize that, right?
Yeah, and that's actually changing. The 33 is going to be retired by me in next season, and possibly the Ford as well. So,
wow.
Yeah, we'll see.
Big news. Big news.
So, yeah, we're going to I have a superstition about not racing championship numbers, and when I picked the number before the season, Max Verstappen hadn't won the championship yet. Then he won it. So I stuck with it, but I'm going to move to a new number, just a superstition of not running championship winning numbers. So, we're going to retire to 33 and pick up a new one.
Sounds good, man. Well, we will look forward to seeing that. We look forward to seeing you next week as we head to Homestead. But, man, have a great night here tonight, and congratulations.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, we'll get him down there into his booth, and then we will grab his teammate and bring Reese Schaefer up here and find out how his race went tonight. Reese Schaefer, Sean and Brandon up in the booth, man, and you've got to be sick of hearing it said second place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot better than 20th place, right? So, we came home second again tonight. Latham, man, he was... I got in front of him the very first start, and after that, he checked out. We were running very consistent with him, and had a couple better pit stops than me, but at the end, they were going to come back. But all in all, it was a great race.
At the end of the race, we were talking about all the seconds and how close you've been to getting that first win on the season, and kind of relating it to what we saw last year in real life in the Xfinity side with Daniel Hemrick. What is it going to take for you to get to that championship next week? You're comfortably in there. You're going to be the points leader just about coming out of this round. If you're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. But either way, right up there among the favorites, despite not having that win. But what's it going to take next week to get that and to seal up that championship?
I would say the main thing is tire wear. I mean, the more and more we've gotten through the season, the more we realize that long run is definitely the play. The tires, they really fall off a cliff, and then they kind of level out. So if you can go extra lap on a pit stop, or maybe put the opinion a little bit lower, just anything you can to save the tires, because that really helps you in the long run. So just have to work at Homestead. I'm not sure. I haven't gone there yet. Might be multi-groove like it was in the past, which would be really interesting if it is, because that means a lot of people can make stuff work. So just gotta stay consistent like usual. Just, if you're up front near the end, good things usually happen. So we'll just try to be up there at the end.
Well, as if the championship wasn't enough, you guys have the team championship to deal with next week, too. What are you looking at on that? Because, one of your rivals, Timothy Latham, is on the team you're racing against.
Yeah, that one's going to be really interesting because that whole team has been so fast all year and just so consistent. And it's really, especially I'd say the last couple of weeks, they've been on fire. So it's going to have to be really... Gonna have to work with the guys and just try to fend them off and just stay up near them as much as we can, and maybe going a lap later on a fuel strategy or going a lap earlier, whatever we can find to try to get that edge. So.
All right, man. Well, this part of the show really well, and I know Zimmerman has already taken all those sponsors away, but they can't wait to hear their names again.
No problem. So we got Burgers Farms, Boss Security, Burgarts, Kieran Dental, Hunterdon Anesthesia Associates, Park Brothers Racing, Parkway Lanes, Teespring Healthcare Billing Incorporated, EWRO. Thanks, Ben, for spotting on. Thanks all the guys working so hard every week and keep the consistency going. I want to thank the family, parents watching, sister, my grandparents watching, friends, Paige, Evan, some coworkers, everyone watching, supporting me. It's been so much fun all year, and got one more time.
That's right, man. Well, congratulations on a second place finish. We'll see if you can improve that by 1 next week in the championship. Can't wait to see that race. It's going to be a big one.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good night.
All right, you too. All right, well, let's bring the winner up here. And, man, he is already posting out in the Discord channels. He is super excited already. Timothy Latham bringing it home once again. Congratulations, my friend.
Appreciate it, man. It's glad to see you back up in the booth again. Man, that was fun. I had a great start to the race. As soon as it went green, I punched it. I guess Reese kind of missed it a little bit there and got a good start. And I was taking it easy on those runs. And at the end, I was able to keep the tires under me. That last run there, I drove super hard and almost killed myself at the end there. But I'm glad we only had 130 laps. So that was fun for sure.
Well, hey, back-to-back wins, getting ready to go to Homestead, where you're obviously going to be one of the favorites out of that Championship 5 with this momentum, but kind of as similar to Reese, but what is it going to take to close this thing out and pick up that championship next week in Miami?
We're just going to have to be mistake-free. We're going to have to qualify well, make sure we don't run into anybody, keep our nose clean, and then hopefully be there at the end. But I'm looking forward to it. I've always liked racing at Homestead. Not really one of my better tracks, but I've always liked racing there, so hopefully we have some fun and we can get the championship.
You know, and Brandon, I don't know if you know this or not, but a little history lesson. I believe that Timothy Latham has had more 3-peats than just 2-peats. And so typically when he wins 2 in a row, that third one is right around the corner. Are you feeling confident going into that Homestead race?
Not so much confidence, but I do hope that luck's on our side. I know gotten quite a few repeats in SRN, but never really a 3-peat. So
well, I thought you had one
break that
last season. You had one last season, the first 3 races, I thought.
Oh no, it was the season 1, but something kind of happened.
Oh well, my history is incorrect.
But yeah, hopefully we can actually get a legit 3-peat this time and win it for sure. But I'm looking forward to it, man. I've never had this much momentum going into a championship race before.
Well, one more question. I asked this to the tank racing guys. The other thing you have to race for is the team championship. As your team moves on into the championship, how's the feeling on your team going into that race against tank racing?
I feel like we can do pretty good. I know at most of the mile and a half, our guys are pretty quick. We just Mike just had some trouble early on with the tires and didn't really get the positions he wanted. And I know Brian was in the top 10 for pretty much most of the race. And you know, I think we got the chance to do it. I think we can do it, but we just got to be mistake free.
All right, buddy. Well, you know this spot of the broadcast really well. Tell us who your sponsors are and give your shout outs.
Just thank everybody at Gear Up. We spent a lot of time in practice getting these tires down and figuring out what we needed to do. And thanks to everyone at Gear Up Apparel for putting this together. Raise Energy, Rep Sports, G-Pop, Bruzy Racewear, Racer Apparel, Edge Setup Shop, Don Wheaton GM, all those guys that put their logos on my car, let me run them, and hopefully we can get us maritime in the future. And man, just thanks to everybody watching. Thanks you guys for putting on the broadcast. And we got one more week. Hopefully we can pull it off.
Sounds good, man. Well, we look forward to it. Can't wait to see you there at Homestead to see if you can pull off the 3-peat and the championship. Timothy Latham, our winner here tonight.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
And we will drop him back down to his chat. Brandon, oh, man, it's good to be back up in the booth again. Of course, we are the third string, so let's not get too crazy here. But I think we came in on the right race.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very interesting one and how it played out, seeing caution free. I got to see some strategy and got to see a really dominant performance from not just Timothy Latham up front, but all 5 of the 5 drivers advancing. And one thing I was kind of noticing, one thing I was kind of noticing there is out of the 15 possible results for these drivers, the 5 drivers advancing over the last 3 races, 14 finishes inside the top 8. unbelievable dominance that we've seen from this group of drivers advancing to Homestead, and it's going to set up for one heck of a race there once we get to South Beach.
Well, there can only be one winner at Homestead, and we will find out who that is next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Don't miss it. Get back here for Homestead and the championship of Speed Racing Network, the Cup Series. But for myself, for Brandon Domain, for everyone here at Speed Racing Network, we wish everyone a good night and go faster.